Okay, welcome to Lab 2. For this lab, you have to write a calculator program with input, some type of a calculation, and output. And how I like to start coding is I like to think about what the user will see when they run my program, and I call this the sample run. So I start from there and then I work backwards and determine what are the inputs, what are the calculations, and what are the outputs. And then I will write that in Pseudo Code, and then I will convert that into Python. So pick some kind of a calculator that has meaning to you. So maybe if you're a knitter, you need to keep track of how much yarn a hat takes. Or if you're a baker, maybe you want to calculate the amount of flour that's needed for a particular amount of cupcakes. Or if you play video games, maybe you want to calculate some type of a score or some bonus points or something like that. But pick something real to you, some hobby or something that you do. And I want all of the programs to be unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a shopping program because I'm going to build on this during the subsequent labs. And I encourage you to do the same thing. Pick a topic you're interested in, write the first lab, and then continue to build on it in subsequent labs. So this is what my program is going to look like. This is called the sample run. I'll print out a welcome message. Welcome to Stephanie's Market. And then I'm going to prompt them for their item. So enter item, and let's say they want bananas. And then I'll put enter quantity, and let's say they enter 2. And I'll say enter unit price, and I'll probably put a $sign there so that that's a correct prompt. And let's say that bananas are 45 cents each. And then I'm going to calculate their total price, and I'll print out a message, and I'll say you owe, and then 0.90 cents, because 2 bananas, 45 cents is 90 cents. And then I'll say thank you for shopping. Okay, and that's my program. So now that I've planned out what the user experience is going to look like, I can use this data when I'm testing my program, because I already know that if I enter bananas 2 and 45 cents, it should say you owe 90 cents. Okay, so when I test my program, this is what I should see. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. And a quick and dirty way to comment out in Replit is to highlight all the lines that you want to comment out, and then hold the Control or the Command key, whether you're on a Mac or a Windows, and then the /. And that's the key that has the question mark on it. Okay, so now I'm ready to write my pseudocode. And so I'm going to think about the inputs. What are the values that my user is giving me? Well, they're going to give me bananas, a 2, and a 45. So I'm going to need to declare variables to hold that information. And I have to think about what type of variables those are. So I'm going to declare a variable to hold bananas, and that's a string of characters. So this is going to be a string, and I'll call this item name. Okay, and then I'm going to declare a variable to hold the quantity. And we're not going to allow them to buy 2.5 bananas, so the quantity value will be an integer. It will be a whole number. So declare integer, and then I'll say quantity, integer. Okay, and then the last input that they're going to give me is the cost. And since costs and dollar amounts have decimals in them, we need to use a variable of type real. So real numbers are numbers that can contain decimal values. So I'm going to declare a variable of type real, and I'll call that the unit price. Okay, so these are the variables that will hold my inputs. Now I have to look at my outputs. what are my outputs? Well, my output is what they owe, right? The total amount that they owe. So this is also a real value. It has decimals in it. So I'm going to create a variable to hold that output. And I'll call it total price. Okay, so those are my variables that I need to create. So now I'm ready to start printing out my messages. So the first thing that I want to print out is a welcome message. So I'm just going to copy that since I already did that work. And I'm just going to say display that. Okay, and then I'm ready to prompt my user. So I'm going to display this. And remember, this is pseudocode. This is code that a computer does not understand. If you tried to run this program, the computer would have no idea how to do this. This is for us to plan out our logic. That's what that's what pseudocode is for, to plan out our logic. And then once you have your program all planned out, then you can just take these statements and turn it into any programming language that you want to write it in. You can write it in Java, you can write it in Python, you can write it in C++, whatever you want to do. So I'm going to display the item, or I'm going to display enter item, and then I'm going to input whatever they type in to this variable that I created up here, item name. So I'll just paste that down there. And then I'm going to display another message. Let's see, enter quantity. That's the next message. And I'm going to input whatever they type into the variable quantity. And then I'm going to ask them enter unit price. So do you see how handy it is to write out the sample run first? And this is exactly what I want my program to look like when I run. So enter the unit price and then input unit price. Okay, so I have all my inputs and now I'm ready to calculate the total price. So to calculate, I'm going to use the set command, and I'm going to set unit price to the quantity times, that's set the total price. I made a mistake there. Set the total price to the quantity times the unit price. Okay, and then what is the next thing I do? I want to print out this message right here. So I'm going to display you owe, and then a $sign, and then I want to print out whatever is stored in this variable. So total price. Okay, and then I want to display this message right here, thank you for shopping. So I'm going to display thank you for shopping. Okay, and that's it. This is my pseudocode, right? This is what I've planned out. So to hand trace this, let's go through a hand tracing exercise. So to hand trace this, I'm going to step through the code and I'm going to declare each variable. So I'm going to create a variable item name. And this is not an underscore. I'm making columns so that I can add the contents of my variable. And then I'll have a variable quantity. And then I'm going to have a variable unit price. And I'm going to change my pen color. And then I have unit price. And then I have total price. Okay, so I'm going to make columns for all of my variables as I step through my code. Then I'm going to display this message, And then I'm going to display enter item, and whatever they type in, I'm going to put into item name. So if they type in bananas, I'm going to put it in there. And then I'm going to display enter quantity, and then I'm going to input whatever they type into quantity. So in my sample run, I had 2, so I'm going to put a 2 into quantity. And then I'm going to display enter the unit price, and I'm going to input the unit price, and if we said 45 cents, that goes there. Now I'm ready to do my calculation. So I'm going to set total price to quantity times unit price. So you always do the calculation on the right hand side first. So 2 times 45 is 90. And then you put that result into total price. So total price will have a 90 in it. And then I'll display UO total price. So it should print UO and then the $sign and then the 0.90. Okay, so that's hand tracing your code. So I think my logic is pretty good at this point. This was a simple example, but as the examples get more complicated, you already want to have this hand tracing skill mastered so that you can quickly go through your code. And we're ready to write this in Python. So I'm going to comment this out, and I'm going to go ahead and write my Python statements. So I'll create item name, and it's a good idea in Python to initialize all of your variables. So I'm just going to initialize that to an empty string. And then I'm going to make a quantity and initialize it to 0. And then I'll make a unit price and initialize it to 0, and a total price and initialize it to 0. Okay, notice in Python we do not need to specify the type that variable will hold. In other languages you do, but in Python you do not. So this is declaring all of our variables. So then I'll go ahead and print this message. And I'm just going to copy it so I don't make any typos. Okay, so I'll print that. And then in Python, we can display the prompt and input in the same statement. So instead of having 2 separate statements, I can say item name is assigned. And then since this is going to be a string, I'm just going to use the input function, and then I'll put my prompt inside the parentheses. So look at this statement. Find the patterns, right? The variable is assigned, and then I'm writing this word input with a parenthesis here and a parenthesis here, and then inside I'm putting a bunch of characters that will be the prompt inside double quotes. And when the user types in bananas, whatever they type in will be put into item name. And so I'm going to do the same thing for quantity. So quantity is assigned input. Whoops. See. Now input will take whatever the user types and it changes it into a string of characters. But we don't want a string of characters. We want a number. We want an integer specifically, right? Quantity we already decided was going to be an integer. So you have to wrap this call to input into a function called int. And this means integer. So it will take this string that the user types in and it will turn it into an integer, and then it will store it in quantity. And so in the next line, I'm going to say unit price is assigned input, and then I'll put this here, right? And unit price, what did we decide? We decided it was going to be a real, and in Python that's called a float. So basically those are the 3 types of variables that you'll be using in this class. You'll be using strings, integers, and floats. So this is the syntax that you have to use. And then on the next line, I'm going to set total price to quantity times unit price. So I'm just going to say total price is assigned quantity times unit price. And then I'm ready to display my output message. So I'll print UO and then total price. And total price is money. And we want to format money to 2 decimal places. So to do that, you're going to put this into a function called format. So I'll type format and then I'm going to put a parenthesis around the total price. And then I'm going to put a comma right here and I'm going to tell format how I want that formatted. So in double quotes, I'm going to say 0.2f. That means format this number. That is a real, right? We already decided it was going to be a real. Format this number to 2 decimal places. Okay, so you're going to use this a lot, so I would write that down in a note packet or put it on a sticky note and put it on your wall because you'll be using this command a lot to format numbers to 2 decimal places. And then I'm going to print thank you for shopping. Okay, and then I'm ready to run my program. And I'm going to use the same data that I did in my sample run because I'm going to test my program. 2.45 and whoops, quantity. It's saying it didn't like that because I entered a 0.45 and it wanted an integer. I didn't read the prompt. So bananas, I want 2 bananas and they're 45 cents each. And it says you owe 90 cents, thank you for shopping. Okay, my logic works wonderfully, right? I have all the numbers that I expected to see over here. But my user experience is not good. You would be marked down for this because everything's squished together and it's just not easy for the user to read. Because when I designed my program, I wanted a blank line here, blank line here, blank line here, and then I wanted a space at the, before they entered their value. So I'm going to go and fix that. I'm going to put a blank line at the end of this string, and when I say enter item, I'm going to put a space there, a space there, a space there, and then before I print UO, I want to print a new line, and then I think I want to print a new line here. Okay, so now let's try it. Ooh, that looks so much better already. Bananas. I want 2 bananas, 45 cents each. You owe 90 cents, thank you for shopping. Look, it matches my sample run exactly. So that is the strategy for writing programs in this class. Start with a sample run, what you want it to look like when the user runs your program. Identify all of the inputs, all of the outputs, make variables for those, and then just write your statements on what you need to do.